Hello everybody and a happy 4th of July to all. This is HitPause here, and in this video I'm going to show you guys these fireworks that I've created, and I'm going to go through them and show how they work, and then I'm going to put a link in the description for where you can go to just download it. This project that I have here is just totally dead. It's blank for the most part. It literally just has this. So here's the fireworks right here. It's a little canister, obviously untextured. It's just there so I can see it. And when I simulate, we will see our display. Okay, could use more work. It could do a little bit of sparkling and things here and there, but I think it's a great start. It actually is being controlled by a blueprint. We have two things here. We have the actual effect itself. We have the blueprint. So I'm also including the sprites and the materials. Okay, it's all basically right here. Originally there was a sound, however these are proprietary, do not belong to me, so I cannot give them out. However, I did leave the location for you to plug them in yourself. Choose your own whistle and then choose your own pop. So you'll need to find that yourself, or you could simply delete these if you don't care for sound at all. Okay, so I'm not really sure which I should go through first, the blueprint or the effect. Let's do the effect first. I think it's going to make a little bit more sense. So what we do is we start off with an initial spark. There it goes. For some reason it's freezing. Am I not in real time? There we go. Okay. So we get this spark. Let's show the grid so we can see where we're at here. Alright. So this initial spark goes up and then disappears. That's all it does. It has a little bit of acceleration to bring it back down. Okay. You can see acceleration over life. Actually, if we take a look at the curve here, it's fairly simple. It doesn't start accelerating downwards until halfway. I didn't even bother making it a smooth curve. It's just linear. It pops up, and then it starts to, after half its life, then it starts to accelerate back downwards. Okay, now what it has, the key here, is the event generator. You can create those here. You just look for event, and there's a generator, and then there's a receiver. Okay, these are basically the two. This will create the event, this will receive the event, and you can have them talk to each other that way. So the event generator that we have here is fairly simple. I don't think I really changed much. It's set to death. Frequency here, anything less than or equal to 1 means every time. So we want that to happen every time. We don't want any of these to fizzle out. We don't care about any of this other stuff. And the custom name here I put because I was having issues. I do this all the time. It's usually WTF or FU or something, you know, harsh that I remember, you know, usually out of anger. But in this case, I think I was being silly. So it came out to be fart, which seems appropriate, I guess. And we only have one receiver here, and that is actually on the burst. Now, once we activate the burst, you'll see that when this thing dies, it now leaves behind a spot. So upon explosion here, it does spawn them, but they don't go anywhere. And that's just a thing that's happening here in the preview. If we get up close to it, you can actually see that there's a bunch of particles in here. Right there, you see that, okay? So the reason that this is happening is because the speed that they explode outward is actually being controlled in the blueprint and not here. So in order to do that, what I tend to do here, I'll just look at the velocity over life. You can see that over life I slow it down, so that way they go boom, and then they kind of go psh, and they come to a real quick stop. So if we look at the actual effect when it plays, so they spread out fast, but then you see at the end they basically come to a really slow stop and just kind of hang there for a second before they dissipate. Okay, so that's the velocity over life. They don't actually have an initial velocity. You'll notice that. Okay, even here you can see everything's I think it's default. I don't know what happens if I hit this. 0. I think I just said just keep it at 1, just to scale it at 1. Okay. So there's no real velocity here. We do control, however, the spawn count. So you can see I spawn anywhere from basically 300 to 500 over the course of, I believe, pretty much instantly. Now that speed aspect of it is actually controlled here by spawning them on the surface of a sphere. So we add a sphere, it's under location, right here, location, sphere. You could also do cylinder and things. And in this case, because I want the sphere to go out in all directions, I keep all these checked. Okay, I want it to be in every direction, positive and negative. And then what we have here is the key to the whole thing is a particle parameter under velocity scale. So here you can actually choose different things. It could be the constant or the curve, but usually, I think most of them, anything that gives you this drop down also has particle parameter. And what you do is you just name it. You can see I say burst speed here, and I just set the mins and maxes from 0 to 5,000 in both, okay, and we leave it here. Now what happens is in the blueprint, immediately after spawning that, we say burst speed here. Right off the emitter, okay, it's the same emitter, we come down here and we pull that off, and we say set float parameter, and it's the burst speed. And in my case, I'm picking anything from 50 to 150, and what that will give me is varying sizes of explosions. See, the blue one went real big, the pink one didn't go very big at all. Okay, the little yellow one here wasn't very big. Look how big the purple one got. It was practically the whole thing. So we have a nice variety now in how big each explosion is. Okay, and that's why we do that. The initial color is actually a constant color here, and the reason for that is because what I did was I did a hue shift. Okay, if we look at the material, it actually has a dynamic parameter on it called hue, which I'm piping into a hue shift based on just a standard color here. Okay, the particle color here is merely there so that I can scale the color over life, because if you put a color in a particle system that's just 111 or 100, just red, it's just going to be like a pretty dull red. It's just going to be red. It won't glow hot. Okay, I add this so that when I come here to scale color over life, you can see that I'm not even using a like a range or anything. Okay, I've locked the XYZ axis. I just said, hey, make it 100. So I'll put that to 1, and you'll see that when these pop out, let's go here and play. That at this stage here, they're really quite dull. Right? They're fairly dull. So when we come in and we scale that to 100 over the course of the entire life, you'll see that throughout the entire thing they maintain much more heat. Okay, they're hotter, they have glows on them now. You can see there's a glow around them. Now it dies out, it's supposed to die out, but they do have that. So that's how I control the heat of it. Okay, the dynamic parameter here is the hue. Okay, and you can see hue here is a parameter, and it's set. Now because I've piped it into a parameter here and over here, right? Remember I called it hue. Just so you know, I'll name this my param number G, right? That makes no sense. Okay? I come over here, if you look at my second parameter, it's just called param2, right? And when I brought this in the first time, it was just param1, param2, param3. If you right click and you say refresh, you get the name. Okay, so now my param number G, right? Which makes perfect sense. So this is now piped in, and it can be fed here. So what that gives me is, this by the way was dead. I didn't use it. So in fact, to avoid that confusion, we'll get rid of it. Here we go with the hue. So I just basically say, after I spawn, this parameter is just anywhere from 0 to 1, the full hue shift gamut. okay, which means it can be any color. But what it's going to mostly be is a primary color, and that's important. The reason it's important is because if you saw what I did earlier, I was trying to just randomize the color in general. Just pick any linear color. The problem with that is you get mostly pastels, because it's going to be pretty rare that R, G, or B are set to 1 and the others are set near to 0. Primary colors tend to be based off of, it's essentially a hue shift off of a fully saturated color. Now, I do want to point out that the fully saturated color I actually have chosen here in the material. Remember, this controls the hue that goes in. This is something that I can do to control the heat. Some of these other things just got destroyed. And you can see opacity is very simple. Now, this is actually additive, okay, so it glows in. But you could just do translucent if you wanted to. It really wouldn't make too much difference, but in this case, because they're supposed to be burning, I kept them additive. And right now they're actually default lit, but to be honest, they probably should be unlit. Okay, that was just a mistake on my part. You can see here I attempted this and I didn't need it, so we went with this. Now, back to the primary colors. The problem with the primary colors is that they cannot heat up. Okay, they can only heat up to their max, which would be 1, 0, 0. So you'll notice here that I put a 0.01 and a 0.01 in here. That way, when we push their heat, they push towards the white, because now these have values in them, they can be scaled up. The thing is that we're doing a color scale, so no matter what I put, if I put 1,000,000 in here, a 0 is never going to do anything, right? But if I put 1,000,000 here with 0.01, I'm getting 100,000, you know? So I can get some heat out of this. So whenever you're trying to do something that's supposed to bloom, say hotly, like which usually pushes towards white, if you think about Photoshop and the color dodge filter, try color dodge on top of pure red or pure green or pure blue. It doesn't do anything at all. But like I said, put even 0.01 in any of the other two and you'll see color dodge works immediately. Bloom and heat work the same way, so try to keep that in mind. So I actually think that just about covers it. Now I have included a light here with a spawn fraction here of 0.001, so we do get one light every once in a while, or maybe even 3. However, I have it shut off for performance reasons, and I'm leaving it here for you guys. If you want to turn it on, just bop. Okay, that's all you got to do. Alright, so we now officially went from the spark dying, generating an event which the burst picks up. The burst has two factors being controlled in code: the color and the amount that it shoots out, which again, that amount is a particle parameter on the velocity scale on the sphere. The other thing about the sphere to note is that it has a very small radius here. Okay, I think it defaults at 0, but we didn't want that, but just something like 1. Okay, now the next element in the effect is actually the smoke trail. So the smoke trail is pretty generic, to be honest. It's nothing great. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. What it does have that's unique, or possibly confusing, is A, an emitter initial location, and B, spawn per unit. So the emitter initial location will tell this emitter to spawn from the location of the particles that exist in another emitter. So when I select this, you'll see that the emitter name is initial spark, which matches up here. You can rename emitters up here at any time. Okay, rename it. Alright, so the emitter initial location is just basically saying, hey, take this emitter, find any particles in it, and spawn me from there instead. And there's a bunch of stuff about inheriting velocities and rotations and scales and things like that. So it's actually quite handy, and that's why the smoke is trailing off. Now the initial velocity here is just a little bit of randomization. So we go 10 and -10 in the x and y, and basically 5 and 1 in the z. We want it to still be kind of moving upwards, because it is still smoke, and smoke, when it dissipates, it drifts upwards. So that's what we have here for initial velocity. It's very simple. Color over life is actually a curve, I believe. Let me hide that. As you can see here, basically, let me get it get it going, and then where can I pause it? Where's the... Okay. Let me try to get it out and then pause. Now I can see it. Okay, so if you look here, it's very simple. We go from red to orange to yellow to white, and that's it. And it's very quick. So in the very beginning, we have, if we look here, we have 0 green, but we have a little bit of blue in there, just a little bit. Just again, we don't want it to be purely one color. We need at least a little bit of another color in there. And then very shortly over its time, it goes to this color here, which is basically red and green together. Okay, if we don't look at blue, let's turn blue off, you can see, well, where is red? Oh, it's up there. Okay, red stays permanently on, I believe. Yes, it does. Because remember, to get to go to orange or to go to yellow is red and green, right? And then to go to white, we just add the next color. You know, we just all of them. So we keep red consistent, and then we just ramp green up, which will pull it towards the orange factor, and then somewhere around here we also start pulling it to white. And you can actually see the color on the line, which is, I think, new and pretty cool. So you can see we're going from red to orange to white. So if I were to drag this up, you would see that I become much more, let's see, yeah, you can see it becomes much more yellow much more quickly. If I pull it down, it will stay red longer. Okay, so you can pause it and just kind of tune it and pull it until you get the color running down the length that you like. So in my case, it's fairly simple, and you can see the sprite is pretty generic as well. Okay, there's nothing special about it. It's not very fuzzy. It's not very smoke-like. This is a little bit cartoony, and so this would be the stage where you guys would want to fix this yourselves. The main thing that I would suggest, if you don't want it to be so separated and spotty like this, which I actually wanted to keep because it made it easier to see, I just pick a different texture, okay, a more fuzzy one, something inside of UE4 or just, you know, just anything else. I'm just giving you this here. The behavior is correct. The sprite that you use is basically up to you. Okay, so that is the color over life. It's fairly simple, and I've covered emitter initial location. Now the next one is the spawn per unit. This is actually slightly important. What it does is it will take the source and determine its velocity, and then instead of, what it'll do is it'll ramp its spawn rate up and down based on that velocity, so that it's much easier to maintain, say, a rocket trail. Here's the thing, if you have a rocket that travels at 1,000 feet per second, you have to spawn quite a few particles to make a solid trail between them without any dot pattern happening that you see here, where you got a bunch of separated spots, right? So what if that rocket has a variable speed? So you could say, okay, well, if it's going 1,000 feet per second, I need to spawn 1,000 particles per second in order to fill it in, or whatever, however many that is, and I go from there. But now my rocket, they just told me that it only goes 200 feet per second, and I gotta go in and I gotta change all my particles. That sucks. Spawn per unit is essentially a ratio on that system. So what I do, the unit scaler here, it's it's weird. This I don't really understand this. I do know that 0.1 and 50 work pretty well. I actually get more based on the speed, but playing around with this, sometimes some of these things can be, it's like, what is the tolerance, things like that. You're going to want to check these things here. This is one I was able to figure out and got something working, but this again is to scale spawn rates based on velocity so that you can fill in trails on faster moving objects. Now keep in mind that obviously that means you have to spawn many more particles. So you'll notice that I popped these to GPU. Okay, GPUs is kind of sucky in a few ways. You can't have events on, you know, come off of them. They don't, and you can't use the easy method of particle sub UV. You got to do kind of a flip bookie trick. But I don't really need it, so I'm not going to cover it. Now the next thing, the last thing in the effect is actually the big one. This one spawns a lot of particles. You can see here it's going to hit up at about 20,000 particles on screen. It's not crazy or anything. It's not a million. We got GPU particles. This is perfectly fine. But if these were CPU particles, you'd kill yourself. You'd kill your system pretty instantaneously. So we keep these as GPU, and these have an emitter initial location, and if you notice, the emitter name here is burst, which happens to be the burst itself, where the color goes shooting out. Remember, this being controlled. Here, we don't see it. Let's unpause here. Here, we're not going to see it, but you'll notice that everything's much whiter at the start. When I turn this off, you'll notice it's fairly red in the glow around here, right? When I turn it on, we have much more white around there. I don't know if you noticed. Now, when I play the actual effect, what it's added is these internal little white sparks. Okay, they're spotty, right? I'm not trying to make a full line because it actually doesn't look like that in real, in real fireworks. And every single one has it. They all have it. Okay, so what we create is this cool, like, almost like universe type, effect inside of it. But from a distance, what it really serves to do is just boost that center and make it just nice and pretty and hot. Now, what I did was I kept these white. This is purely my own design decision. Okay, that's just purely all it is. You have every ability in the world to come over here and actually mess with color if you would like. In my case, I am just, let's see, I don't think I'm actually doing anything. Nope, I'm not changing a thing. Color over life is the constant, and again, I just pushed it up. I didn't want this one to go to 100 because when I did that, it I think it was too hot. Yeah, it just feels too hot now right there in the middle. That's so bright. I didn't like it, so I pulled that back. That's all. As you can see here, wow, it's like a nuclear bomb going off on the horizon. So I just keep it at 5. That way it's not overly hot. Still shows up. The sizes of these things could be a little bit better or whatnot. Lifetime's fairly short. I believe they're only a second. Okay, they could probably be like 0.8 to 1.2 or something, so that they have a little bit of leftover. Die out here, and we'll check it out. Now, the other thing I want to make sure that you guys are aware of is that this is actually called the Fireworks Mini. And the reason is because it's actually kind of small. The character is about that big, and when we play, you can see that they're tiny little fireworks. Now, the reason for that was because of the scale of the project that I built this in. And the thing is unfortunately, there's no real fast or easy way to make it large. However, I actually have a large version of it. The problem is this one doesn't have all of the cool code to control the stuff. So what I'm probably going to do off camera is repair this one so that it behaves the same way, but it's a larger version. Let me show you guys a problem that I wish would get addressed. I'm going to take this and I'm going to scale it up to, say, 10. So what you would expect is that this one's going to go wee, like pop up to about here, and boom, you see a bunch of little guys. And you would expect this one to shoot way up and have the explosions up there, right? Why are they exactly the same size? Tell you why. Because we're spawning it here. So I don't know I don't, maybe one of these is good. Maybe this will work. So I might learn something on camera, which would be sweet. I love learning new stuff. So I'm going to make them all 10. I have no idea if this is going to do anything. Obviously scaling the actor doesn't do squat, right? Because again, we're spawning, so it doesn't matter how big that thing is. Let's see what we get now. I'm going to go ahead and say that I just learned something. So awesome. Thank Christ. That actually makes me happy. Okay, so let's expose this for everybody, right? Let's make it useful. You know what? Just scale. And we will make that visible. And let's just go ahead and default to 1. We don't want to be too assumptuous here. Just go through and do a little bit of saving and cleaning up. I want to make sure everything gets sent over when I'm done. Okay, so let's see. We'll take this guy, which we now have scale, and we'll make him 5, and we'll keep the other one at 1. Let's make sure we get 2 completely different sized. Certainly looks like it to me. Sweet. Okay, so there's scale handled. I am very thankful for that, which is funny. Does anybody know why this is funny? What's the name of this thing? So clearly, I didn't know that you could do that because I went and made a completely separate particle system and changed all of the attributes instead of just taking this one and scaling it. So, like I said, we learn something new every day. Yay. All right. I actually feel stupid. All right. I think that's about it. I don't really know what else to cover on the particle system itself. Again, initial spark dies, generates the receiver, which causes the burst. The smoke trail is just being generated off the spark. Now let me explain actually one more thing. There's a bit of timing going on here. The initial spark has a lifetime of 3 seconds. Dead on. It's never going to change. I don't randomize this lifetime. The reason is because these guys actually will start spawning at the very beginning, but what I've done is I've delayed them exactly 3 seconds. Now remember, these guys are the little white trails that get left behind by the burst. Those would start spawning and building up at world 0, at the 0 point where they would. You can see them there. They actually appear. And the reason is because there is just that 0.0, that fraction of a second of overlap where 0 is 0, and it actually has a chance to spawn one. So if I really wanted to fix that, I would say, or actually it needs to be a little bit longer, and I should no longer get that little spot. Okay, so there's nothing there. Now I might get one at the very end. Nope, just fine. Okay, so I had to delay that just a tenth of a second longer than normal, so that 0 wasn't 0 at the same time, right? So 3 didn't hit 3. Okay, so yeah, I don't think there's anything else. This, like I said, had to be delayed based on this guy's lifetime, because when this guy dies, the rest of the thing just goes and starts happening. Now the other thing is that this one, the smoke trail's duration is set to 3 seconds. Because remember, the smoke and the initial spark are both happening in the very beginning. Right here, they're together. So they need to both last 3 seconds. This one is only spawning 1. So in here, I don't care about the delays or anything. It just happens instantaneously. It's the lifetime of this that really matters, 3 seconds. Okay, so hopefully you guys can catch that, because this can be very important when it comes to timing your effects. You got to see what's going to happen before and when and things like that. And just because I have emitter initial location doesn't mean that if this doesn't exist, it won't still try to spawn these. I really, really, really wish there was a checkbox to say do not spawn if there is no source. Stop spawning with source, or link spawn to source. Something like that, so that if there is no burst, I can't spawn. Okay, that's how it should work. All right, now let's go into the blueprint. It's actually really simple. I have a test thing here, hook up for testing only. I will turn this off for you before we deliver it. But all we do is we call a function called the grand finale. Now the grand finale is essentially, it's going to last for 5 seconds. It's going to fire off a new particle system every half second. I could make this 10 seconds and I could make it 0.1, and you will see that I have, well, I have an AMD. It's a 4.5 gigahertz. It's an 8 core. I don't remember the number on it. I got 32 gigs of RAM, and I have a Titan. Not a Titan X, I have the 6 gig. So my computer's okay, it ain't great, but we're gonna get some serious performance loss here. Oh, well, hang on. Let's make sure we hook it up. Right, I unhooked it to show you guys. Okay. So I'm gonna get a lot of them. It's gonna go for 30 seconds. It's tanking pretty hard. Not the worst. There's a lot of particles on the screen, and you can see that. I mean, to be honest, my FPS isn't that crazy. It's roughly 60 anyway. You know, I think I'm G-synced or whatever it is. Okay, so that's how we can determine what we want to do. So all you gotta do, and I put this here for you guys too, needs an external get all, or you need to get a handle on this from somewhere. If you want to say, oh, my character walked through a trigger, and when I walk through the trigger, as long as I have the key, then boom, these go off, well, then one of those elements, whether or not it be your character, the trigger, or the key, or whatever, is going to need to get a handle on this thing. And the easiest way, obviously, is just to say, hey, get all actors of class, and you could call, you know, we could just look for the fireworks BP. This is dumb because I'm doing it in myself, but any other thing could do that. And then you could just say for each loop, and then all you got to do is come from here and say grand finale, and then you can punch in whatever you want. Okay, so you can have it last for 10 seconds, and you can have one spawn every 1 second, and you can place multiple of these. Okay, just remember that the grand finale is affecting each individual blueprint here. So I will get, if I delete this one, this will grand finale itself, right? It'll shoot all of the ones here. The way we did it was we put about 4 of them side by side, and we just toned it down. So we had a few different locations, so it felt a little bit better. Just, you know, and then cut your amount of time into a quarter. But this is really all you need to do. Now what the grand finale does, it's very simple. It's actually just a loop timer here. We set the timer by the function name. We tell it to be looping. Okay. What we do is then we need to promote the handle because we can't clear this function. We can't stop this function from happening. Okay. Now the rate is fed in. So remember, it will loop on this time, right? So if I set it at 0.1, every 0.1 seconds, it's going to fire the function. The function is here. The function that we're firing is called fire. Okay. So you could also, at any moment, fire an individual piece if you wanted to. Okay, I don't actually give you the ability to directly set a specific color. That's up to you. It's very easy to do that. You could add an input here and pipe that into the parameter. Okay, and then if you wanted to, you could have a Boolean check to say, hey, is it random or not? And if it's not, you use the color they send. If it is, you pipe it through a different channel. It's pretty easy. Okay, so we set it, and then what we do is after however long we want the duration to be, we just clear it. So every time we call it, if we say, you know, 10 seconds and a rate of 0.5, it'll come in here and it'll say, okay, well, fire the function in 0.5 seconds from now, and it'll do it, boom. And then in 0.5 seconds again and again and again, it will keep doing it. But after 10 seconds, because we set the duration going into here, we'll clear it. Simple, okay? And the actual firing of the particle system is quite simple as well. I'll explain the sound here too in a second. So basically we get our self's location, because remember, we want it to spawn from the point that the object is, and self is this object right here. And we just use that as the location. And what I did was I just gave it a little bit like about a 30-degree amount of roll. You could also do pitch and maybe yaw if you wanted to, but I just did it in one axis just so they're not all shooting up at the same exact thing, because that's really stupid and boring. You'll see. Actually, did I even? Well, here's the other thing. Don't forget that it's also here. It's also here. In initial velocity here, you can see I have a range here. So they're not all going to go at the same angle here anyway. But I added a 30-degree into another axis. I don't really, to be honest, this is pointless, but I'm throwing it in there anyway because it's just another level of adding more variety to it. So there's nothing really wrong with that. And again, I could do that and that, put them in there too. But I'm just going to leave it here for now. Okay, and then this was the new thing, right? That was awesome. And then essentially we go straight to setting the 2 parameters that I need. And that's it. Now this always kind of freaked me out. I spawn it, then I set the parameters. Like, wouldn't it start shooting out all the stuff before I get to this point? The fact is that it just works. So my worry was alleviated. Again, you know, we got the hue and we got that. But really, if you just want to have like a fire, you know, some kind of firework or something, and let's say you didn't need these parameters, it was all randomized inside of the thing and you were happy with it, literally all you gotta do is call this. Okay, this would be a necessity, but these, you don't even need these. You know, you could just recombine that and just leave it. But you do need to know where the location is, otherwise it's going to spawn it at world 0. Okay. Again, I am actually going to keep this, just so I don't feel so stupid doing it. All right. With the sounds, you guys are going to need to create your own cues. I can't give these up; they weren't mine. Okay, I'm sorry, I just can't. It's not my stuff. So, same thing. The whistle should happen at the base, right? So if you're standing near here and this goes, you know, and shoots up with a whistle, you should hear that from right here. This, you know, but when it explodes and pops, you shouldn't hear that right here. That shouldn't be the center. That should be up here somewhere, right? So what we did was we just faked it and we just put it 150 units up. So from the same location plus 150 in the Z is where we play the pop sound. And actually this should be more like this. You'll notice is not 3 seconds, and you might confuse yourself to think, why not? The reason is because of the sound effect that we used had a bunch of pre-pops, and it even had a whistle in the pop that we had. So in order to get it to actually play on the correct timing, we had to push it 1 second earlier just because of the way this sound that we chose played. Now I'm not going to play the sound or anything like that, but there's plenty of fireworks popping sounds. If you find one that just has the pop, play it at 3 seconds. But if you find one that goes pop, you're going to need to affect that here or go and edit the sound. So just keep that in mind. That's the reason we pushed this a second earlier, was due to how this sound behaved. It did not just pop instantly, it had a pre-sound to it. So, and really, I can't think of anything else. I really can't. So I think I'm going to sign off here. You guys will find a link in the description. It'll be probably just a Dropbox link. I don't have a website anymore or anywhere to really upload stuff for the public, so I'm just going to put it in my public spot on Dropbox. If anybody can or would be so kind as to rehost it, I would be very appreciative, and if you give me the link, I'll put it up in there and I'll put a thanks for you and everything like that. But it should work. Keep in mind, this is 412. 412.4 to be precise. So I have a feeling this is not going to just plug in to an older project. I don't have the time to go back and make a version of this for every version of the engine, right? So I'm going to keep it at 412. If you really need to, you know, if you really need to put it in 410 or 4.8 or 4.6, if you're still there, because I know there's people that are. You're going to kind of have to recreate it. I don't think it'll just plug in. It's pretty simple, in my opinion. I didn't do anything here that required any special anything, to be honest. I did learn how to do this from Alan Willard on his stream on Twitch, so go check that out. I believe he does cover the particle parameters here, which is a very handy thing, being able to control many of these aspects. And again, if you look, just about every single piece here has that. And anything that can drop, you can have a distribution, should have the distribution particle parameter. And to get the handle on that is super simple. You just, you either spawn, I could have put it in here and kept activating it over and over again, but I figured just spawning them was easier. So again, once you've done this, it's already cast. Okay, it's already there and ready to receive. So you can just say set float parameter, and I could call this, sphere scale or something like that. Spell it right. Okay, and so I plug that in. Now that's not going to do anything. However, what it's also not going to do is crash, and it's not going to give me an error. It's just not going to. It's going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to go try to set the parameter, and there isn't one, so I'm just going to skip it. It's exactly the same thing as trying to set an like a dynamic material instance parameter, and you get the name wrong. It doesn't crash, it just doesn't do anything, so you got to go check your names. Okay, and again, if I really could here come to the sphere, right, to start radius, particle parameter, sphere scale. I'm going for the whole thing. We'll just add it. Let you have that ability. So it'll spawn anywhere from 10 to 150. You're going to see a very disgusting particle effect. It's going to look horrible. I'm going to back real far away too. Did I tell it not to fire? This delay here is just so that it gives you a chance to move the camera around. I'm gonna go ahead and say that that's actually really pretty. I kind of felt like it didn't do anything. Sphere scale. I'm gonna make sure I got the correct name. So I'm gonna paste it. Oh, here's why. I never gave myself. Notice I'm going from 10 to 150, but here I'm limiting it to 1. So it doesn't matter what I put in there, it's going to max it out at 1, which is kind of nice, but also kind of can throw you off. So let's see what we get now. We should get them spawning it like already really far away. See that? See how they're already huge? See? So it works. Now I could say, 0.1 to 5 or something. To be honest, what I'm doing isn't adding anything. It's not helping. But you can see that we get these. Some of them are just so spastastic crazy, Just because of that 5. It's like 5 times large, it's 5 times farther in its general travel. It's kind of hard to explain that, but so essentially I don't want to do that. I think I just keep it at 1. Which means that goes away. But just showing you how you can do it. It's fairly simple, not too hard. Shouldn't be a problem if you need to do that. So again, any parameter that you need, you can feed it for any reason. Give it any values you want, and you should be good to go. So this is Hipon signing off. Look for the link. I'm not going to put the video up until I have the link ready, down, and testable, and everything's good. So as long as that works, I think everything should be okay. If you have problems with the link, let me know. Again, I really am looking for somebody to help me double host that. And give me a link for that. It would be very, very appreciated, because Dropbox is just a piece of shit, right? I can't control that, so, and I don't have any other way. So Hippo signing off. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one, which I'm not sure what it is going to be yet.